Okay guys, so before we begin math, go ahead and get out your packet for Friday, May 15th. Find the anchor chart for metric mass or weight, and then go ahead and tear it out. We're going to look over this before we begin, and then we'll get into the chapter, or we'll get into the lesson. So you should have this out and you should be looking at it. So today we're going to be talking about the units of metric weight, which we also would use those to measure mass. We actually learned that in science. To measure mass, they don't really use anything, they don't use the units from the customary system, they use the units from the metric system. So we know that mass is the amount of matter in an object. And we measure that using milligrams, grams, and kilograms. Now this page, just like all of our others, is shown from the lightest unit to the heaviest unit. Now in this lesson we're not actually going to really be talking about milligrams, but it doesn't hurt to go ahead and introduce it. So the milligram is the smallest unit that we are learning today. Its abbreviation is mg, both lowercase, and 1 milligram is about the weight of one grain of rice. So it's very, very light. Because it's only 1 grain, not a bunch. Then next we have grams, which are measured, is abbreviated with just a lowercase g, and it is about the weight of 1 paperclip. So it's not very heavy either. It's a little heavier than a milligram, but it's still pretty light. So think of a paperclip. Then we go to a kilogram. The kilogram abbreviation is kg, both are lowercase. And 1 kilogram is about the weight of 1 textbook. So it's close to 1 pound, but not quite. It's a little less than a pound. A kilogram, it feels a little bit lighter than a pound. Just like a gram feels a bit lighter than an ounce. You'd have to pile a few paper clips before you get to an ounce, but 1 gram is only 1 paper clip. So we're mostly today just going to be talking about grams and kilograms. So today's lesson is going to be a lot like yesterday, where we're really only choosing between 2 units. One is really light and one is not so light. So that the choosing the unit is not going to take a very long time today. But what you need to watch out for is to make sure you're choosing the correct number of units. Does something weigh the same as 40 paper clips or 4 paper clips? So 40 grams or 4 grams. Same with kilograms. Does something weigh about the same as 5 textbooks or 50 textbooks? That's what you need to be careful of. It's not going to be super hard to choose between grams and kilograms. The hard part may come in when you're trying to decide, not the hard part, but the one that takes a little more thought is going to be choosing how many grams or how many kilograms. Okay, so now that we're done going over this, let's go ahead and look at the book. Okay guys, you should be on page 787 in your textbook, and let's read these sentences under the title. Mass is the amount of matter an object has. Well, we learned that in science. The mass of an object is not affected by gravity. Remember, that is weight. Weight is what is affected by gravity. Mass is just the amount of matter in the object, so that has nothing to do with gravity. Whereas weight differs depending on gravity, because that's how weight is how much gravity is pulling on that object. So we're going to be learning about grams, which are abbreviated as G. Another example of something that weighs about a gram is a penny. And then a kilogram, abbreviated as kg, which is the mass of about 6 medium apples. So imagine if you had not big apples, but like 6 medium apples. So like that. That's probably too big. Like that. Those size apples, like 6 of them would be about a kilogram, the same as a textbook. Just for your reference, and we will talk more about this on Tuesday, but you might need this in this lesson, 1,000 grams or 1,000 pennies or 1,000 paper clips is the same as 1 kilogram. So you can have 1,000, you can have a balance scale, and on one side you'd have 1,000 pennies or 1,000 paper clips, and on the other side, you'd have 1 textbook, or you'd have about 6 medium apples, and they would be at the same level. So they would be balanced. They would be equal. Okay, let's go ahead and look at example 1. Okay guys, finger or pencil on example 1 and read in your head while I read out loud. Which is the more reasonable estimate for the mass of a laptop? 2 grams or 2 kilograms? So what you're going to do is you're going to imagine a laptop. If you have a laptop, maybe go grab it and feel it. Feel how much it weighs. If not, just imagine it. Now we're going to use logic to figure it out. Well, 2 grams would be about the same mass as 2 pennies. A laptop feels much heavier than 2 pennies. 2 kilograms would have the same mass as about 12 medium apples or 2 textbooks. Well, it's much more reasonable to say that this laptop weighs the same as 2 textbooks or 12 apples than 2 pennies or 2 paper clips. So, 2 kilograms is the more reasonable estimate. So you're going to be using logic. You're going to be imagining the weight of these things that you know, like pennies and paper clips, and comparing it to the weight of the things that they're asking about. Okay, let's go ahead and look at example 2. Okay guys, let's look at example 2. So finger or pencil on example 2 and read in your head while I read out loud. Is it more reasonable to say that a rabbit's mass is 3 grams or 3 kilograms? Now we're talking about a full-grown rabbit, not a brand new baby tiny newborn rabbit. Well, let's use logic. 3 grams is about the same as 3 pennies or 3 paper clips. Sorry, I like a tickle. It's much too small. 3 kilograms is much more reasonable. It's about 3 textbooks. Now the rabbit may not weigh quite that much, but the rabbit is going to weigh closer to 3 kilograms, or the same as 3 textbooks, than it is to 3 paper clips. So, again, the kilograms are the best choice. So that means 3 kilograms is the more reasonable estimate. Now, in these examples and the guided practice, you're basically just choosing between grams and kilograms. Now, there may be times where you actually have to assign a number. That's where you're just going to imagine, okay, I know that this rabbit, I would weigh it in kilograms. Then you're going to imagine that balance. Imagine that your hands are that balance. Think about, you may not have ever held a rabbit before, but you've seen pictures, you've seen it on TV, in movies, you might have seen one in your yard or something like that. So imagine holding that rabbit. Feel its weight in your hand, and then you felt 3 textbooks. You felt textbooks. So imagine how many textbooks would be the same weight as that rabbit or whatever object you're looking at. Like on, let's look at number 9 on the guided practice really quick. I know we still, I'm sorry, not the guided practice, the independent practice. I know we still have the guided practice left, but I want you to look at this really quick. On number 9, it says the table lists items that can be found in the classroom. Estimate the mass of each object. Record your estimates in the table. So not only are you choosing between grams and kilograms, but you're trying to decide, okay, how many grams or kilograms. So we'll do the glue bottle together. I know that I don't have it on here, but you know what I'm talking about. So imagine a glue bottle. Maybe you have a glue bottle at your house. Maybe you don't, but you've all held a glue bottle at some point. If you have one at your house, go ahead and grab it. So either imagine or have that glue bottle in your hand and pretend like your hands are a balance. How many textbooks would be the same as a glue bottle? Well, a textbook would be too heavy. It would be way down here and the glue bottle would be way up here. So, you know, a kilogram is not how you would measure that. So we're going to go back, and now you're going to imagine paper clips or pennies. About how many paper clips or pennies would you have to have in your hand to balance the weight of a glue bottle? And if you think about it, you'd have to have a few. You'd have to have probably more than 10. Maybe about 20 paper clips would end up, or pennies, would end up feeling about the same mass as that glue bottle. So that's what you have to do when you have to choose a number and a unit. First of all, figure out, okay, well, grams is too small or kilograms is too big, so figure out what unit. Then figure out how many of those units, based on how you know that a textbook is about 1 kilogram and a paper clip or a penny is 1 gram. So how many paper clips or pennies would equal that object, or how many textbooks would equal the weight of that object. Okay, so that's how you would do number 9. Let's go back to the guided practice and we'll work those out, and then we'll go through what you're doing in the independent practice and homework, and then we'll be done. Okay, so on the guided practice, the directions say circle the more reasonable estimate for each mass. So for number 1, we have a hat, a baseball hat. If you imagine the weight of a baseball hat, or you actually have a baseball hat, you can feel that it's definitely not even close to the weight of a textbook. The weight of a textbook is way heavier. So that means we wouldn't be using kilograms, especially 25 textbooks. So that leaves us with 25 grams, and if we think about it, a baseball hat is pretty light, and it does probably weigh about the same as 25 pennies or 25 paper clips. Okay, now number 2, we have a polar bear, a real live polar bear. Not a picture of a polar bear, not a polar bear toy, a real live polar bear. So we definitely aren't going to measure it in grams because we know that a polar bear is huge. And grams, 450 grams, while yes, that is a lot of pennies or a lot of paper clips, that's still nowhere near the weight of a polar bear. So we know that it has to be 450 kilograms. And we could think maybe a polar bear, a young polar bear, probably would weigh about the same as 450 textbooks. Okay, so that's it for the guided practice. We're not going to do any of the independent practice together because I think that you guys can handle it. Numbers 3 through 8, you're doing the same thing as the guided practice. Just use your logic and reasoning skills to figure out which one matches better. Number 9, we already talked about. 10 and 11, you're choosing which one is more reasonable. Number 11, make sure that you say why. And then number 12, you're picking objects. It says list 5 classroom objects. Just look at in the room around you. Choose 5 objects in the room around you that have a mass greater than 1 kilogram. So that means they weigh more, or they have more mass than 1 textbook. Number 13 is another reasoning skill. If you were paying attention in our science lessons, you will know how to answer this question. And then number 14 is a critical thinking problem. So you need to use what you learned today along with what you already knew to come up with a brand new answer. Then on the homework, numbers 1 through 4, you're choosing the most reasonable unit and estimate of the mass, And then numbers 5 through 9 is where you're choosing the most reasonable unit. You're going to use the abbreviations for the units, so make sure that you use the correct ones. Number 10, you're doing the same thing. You're choosing the most reasonable unit. Number 11, you're saying you're choosing the most reasonable weight. Don't forget to say why. And then 12 through 14 are vocabulary, and then number 15 is again where you are choosing the most reasonable mass of an object. But this is where you actually have to think, okay, is it 2 of these units, or is it 20 of these units, or is it 200 of these units? So you need to choose the right amount of the units, not just the unit, because it's not, you don't have to think too much to figure out whether you need to use small grams or larger kilograms, but you have to, when it comes to choosing how many of those units, that's where you have to think. Okay, that's it for today's lesson. I know it's short again, but we only had 2 units. If you have any questions about today's lesson, then please reach out to me between 1 and 5 and I'll help you out. Just make sure that you are really thinking critically and you are imagining those weights, or if you have these objects, you are testing it out. Don't just guess right away. Think about it for a minute. Okay, that's it. Go ahead and work on your independent practice, and then you can start on your homework right after, or you can wait until later today.